God put me on an airplane and said, sit next to this guy for a little bit, open your heart, listen, and just kind of do what you're supposed to do.
This attention to detail, how you do anything is how you do everything.
We're going to love on you, and we're going to take care of you, and we're going to be here for you.
You're a career, lifelong airman. At what point during the journey you're like, yep, this is what I'm doing? From South Bend to Evansville and everywhere in between, this is Get In, the show focused on the Hoosier State and the incredible stories happening here today. I'm Nate Spengel, founder of Get Indiana, and I will be your host for today's conversation. Mark your calendar, we're headed down to Brown County on July 26th for Hard Truth Bourbon and Barbecue Festival. Get ready for a smoky, savory, and spirited weekend at Hard Truth in Brown County. Join me at Hard Truth Distilling Co. the weekend of July 25th and 26th for an unforgettable celebration of bourbon, barbecue, and good times. We've got live music rocking from 9 until noon with 4 different acts, bourbon and barbecue tastings and pairings, bourbon blending and cocktail crafting classes, as well as a VIP bourbon and cigar lounge. They also have interactive competitions and outdoor activities, bourbon barrel roll races, barbecue toss and cornhole tournaments, $10 entry for a $300 prize. If you're a good cornhole player, hit me up, let's join up. And they have axe throwing as well. Me and my team are going to be down there, and I will be releasing a full weekend itinerary for Nashville/Brown County that is guaranteed to be a great time. Tickets for the Hard Truth Bourbon and Barbecue Fest start at $10 for general admission. That gets you entry in the festival, the live music, and pay-as-you-go food and drink. For $35, you can get the barbecue sampler pass, tastings from all the barbecue competitors, or for $75, you can get the VIP ticket where you get VIP lounge access, premium bourbon tastings, and a guided distillery tour by master distiller Brian Smith, previous guest of the show. I will see y'all in Brown County the weekend of July 25th and 26th. Now let's get into the episode. Today I'm joined by Mike Daggett, the president of Folds of Honor, Indiana. Now Folds of Honor is a nonprofit organization that provides educational scholarships to the spouses and children of U.S. military service members and first responders who have fallen or been disabled while serving our country and communities. Mike is a U.S. Air Force veteran. He retired in 2019 after 27 total years of service. Today we're going to be talking about Mike's journey through the military and the impact it had on his life, the history of the Folds of Honor program, and the impact they are making across the Hoosier State and beyond. Mike, welcome to Get In.
Man, it is so cool to be here. Nice to meet you finally.
It is a pleasure to meet you too. And you have to start off. Thank you for your service. 27 years, man. That is, I can only imagine the stories you can tell, and we're going to get into a few of those today, and I'm pretty excited about it.
It was a fun 27 years. I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah. For now, right? Well, I mean, when you think about service, a lot of times that's distilled in families. Right. Where it comes down through a lineage of my grandfather served, my great-grandfather served, my father served. Like, was that how it was for your family?
Absolutely. Yep. I remember I was born on a Navy base, Charleston Naval Weapons Station. And so my first core memory was seeing Navy ships. My dad was 23 years in the Navy. And for the most part, my two brothers and I were raised by my mom. And because he was out to sea 8-9 months at a time, and we'd go to the docks and see the ship come in. And I mean, that's the earliest memories I have is waving that American flag, watching the Navy ships come home. And I kind of said, this is probably where I'm going to end up,
Wow. And from what was that first memory? If you think back to it, it's like,
I just remember, obviously photos back then, remember some of us who were older, we had these photo albums that moms and dads kind of pieced together. And I just remember seeing pictures of, we're on the dock and there's this big Navy ship behind us and we're all holding an American flag and dad's coming back after being 8 or 9 months gone. And I don't really recall the time where he was gone, but I recall the little things that he did while he was gone. Like he would read bedtime stories on cassette tape and we would play them before we go to bed most nights. And
there was
no iPhone,
no FaceTime,
no texting, no FaceTime. But I just remember that. And just growing up on a Navy base, it was just part of who we were. And I very distinctly remember in 83 when he retired, being at his retirement ceremony and going, wow, my dad's the coolest person in the world.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, he did 23 years in the Navy. But as you were growing up, was it always fanfare and like dad is so cool? Or was it ever like, oh man, like Jimmy's dad is coaching T-ball or whatever, my dad's out on the ship?
I kind of always thought my dad was a hero in that sense.
Yeah.
And I don't ever really recall missing him. Like I remember always being proud of what he was doing, but not really understanding it at that age. But as we look back at it now, you're like, man, what a sacrifice he made for our family.
When I think about like movies or anything, when you see those videos on Instagram of like soldiers coming home, and it's like, that'll just like pull right at your heart. It has to be a very hard conversation to have with a child of like, oh, I have to go away for 9 months at a time. And then how long would he be back in between?
I don't remember it seemed like, kind of he was home more than he wasn't for me looking back on it. But But I know for multiple times, 3 or 4 times, he was gone for 8 or 9 months. And as a young kid, that's a core part of your life. And
yeah. And so for you, as you were growing up, was it automatically then, you graduate high school and it's like, this is what I'm doing, I'm enlisting and I'm going to go do this?
Pretty much. It wasn't, I kind of thought I'm going to go to college route, and so I was toying between, am I going to go to college and make something of myself, or am I just going to join the military? And for some people, I did 27 years, so I'm very proud of it. But for some people, it's a fallback. It's I have no other options, and so I'm going to do this. And I didn't look at it that way, but I also was kind of thinking like, man, do I want to go? My dad never went to college. Do I want to improve myself and go to college? And I learned quickly that college and I are not friends.
Did you go try it?
Oh, I did. Yeah. Oh, it was a blast. Let me tell you, it's probably the best year and a half of my life.
It was. That's good. A year and a half. I thought you were going to say it was the best 6 weeks of my life.
No, I did a year and a half.
Okay.
Did I even? I don't know. About maybe a year. Academic suspension, academic probation. Dean's list. Not that one. The other one.
Oh.
And where the dean says, "Hey, we appreciate you paying your bill, but there's way more to this experience than just paying." And so the school said goodbye.
Were you still down in South Carolina?
I was up in Maine at the time.
Oh, in Maine.
Yeah. So Dad retired, went to work for a government contractor, and we kind of moved all up and down the East Coast for a little bit. But
okay.
Yeah. So the University of Southern Maine. Shout out to you guys up there, Huskies. I did okay.
Best 18 months of his life.
Yep. Man, we had some fun. But what was interesting is I tried to go in the military early on, and I was disqualified. They said, you could never ever serve. I have a high frequency hearing loss. It impacts me a little bit. Sometimes I have a hard time hearing, but it's not limiting, right? And so the Air Force said, no, you cannot join the military. I'm like, well, that's kind of odd. So then, okay, well, I guess I'll try this college thing. And that didn't work either. So then I'm like, now what? An Air National Guard recruiter found my paperwork and said, hey, I can do a waiver on this. If you want to join, I can hook you up. And I'm like, I'm all in. And
at that point, it was like, you mean you're 18 months into college? Is it clear, like,
yeah,
I'm not gonna get it's not 4 years, not my forte.
No, not at all. It was. I mean, I had a great time, good friends. It was that, I grew up in a small town family, and that first taste of freedom, it was just too much for me. There's no rules. I remember one of my early professors said, "Hey, I don't care if you come to class or not," and I took that as you don't have to be here. Very difficult to get the material, especially back then, if you don't show up to class. So didn't do so well.
What you needed is a little structure.
I needed some structure.
So then obviously getting into the military is they're your guardrails.
Right. And so I thrived in that environment, right? I needed someone to say, hey, do this, do this, do this, do this. And it sounds kind of crazy at first, but it worked out well.
Well, and when people think about it, like, hey, they join the military, I feel like instantly you go to like war or boot camp. Like, there's no in between, right?
You're either killing people or getting killed. It's your choice.
Yeah, or it's like you're getting like just screamed at by whoever it is. And obviously, to do it for 27 years, there are different phases and process to it. Take us through your journey, right? So you Air National Guard, is that what you said? That's where you kind of start at?
Yep.
Okay, so you joined there in 8 weeks, 6 weeks, somewhere over the summer?
6 weeks in boot camp. Yep. 6 weeks down in San Antonio, Texas,
for
the Air Force. And, I remember getting there first thing in the morning, leaving Maine, flying Maine.
What time of year is this?
October.
So it's like, it's kind of chilly in Maine in October.
Yeah, and it's not chilly in San Antonio in October. And so that was a little bit of shock. So I get down to San Antonio, we fly down, and I remember, I got there a little bit off of the schedule. Like a lot of people arrive at the same time, and then there's some stragglers that come in, and then also the next morning it's showtime. And I kind of get there a little bit out of schedule. I don't know if they didn't know what to do with me or whatever, but next thing I know, they said, go stand on the corner, put your nose against the number on your locker, and wait for further instruction. I think I stood there for like a year. It was like the longest time in my life. I'm just standing there like afraid to move, afraid to breathe. And next thing you know, they come in, start yelling, screaming, and it's just like,
What year is this?
92.
92. And you're sitting there just twiddling your not even twiddling your thumbs.
Yeah,
you're
you're not moving.
Straight as a board. And what's the thought process behind that, right? I mean, you did this for 27 years.
Yeah.
Is the thought process to come in hot, heavy, like let people set them straight a little bit? Is it like that consistently for the rest of your time, or is it kind of like early on you're the rookie?
Yeah, so they want to break you down first, right? You are no longer Mike. You are now airman. right? And you are part of a team. And so whatever you did in your life, whoever you thought you were, all of that is gone. You are now part of this amazing team that's working together. And so they kind of build you down, but even through basic training is like, of course they shave your head and they, you get a whole uniform, and your uniform at first doesn't even have your name on it. So you're really just you're a number.
That's one of my favorite lines. There's like a Trace Adkins song where it's like, you want to keep your hair, and someone says, yes, hold out your hand because here it comes.
Here it comes.
Right? It's like, it's such a great, on the outside, some people will listen to that and be like, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. But when you think about building a culture, it's like no one's ego, no one's hairline, no one's mullet is more important than anyone else. Right. And it's uniform, teamwork. Right. I love it. I think that I don't know. I always get just like charged up reading books, hearing the stories. So you go through there and you don't even you're no longer Mike. Right. You're just Airman.
You're just Airman. And, do
you have is it a specific color t-shirt? Like, don't you start?
We're wearing our camouflage.
Okay,
they call them BDUs at the time, battle dress uniform, and just wearing that. And then somewhere in the middle, they give you a name tag. So now you have an identity. And then slowly you get your rank, and then you kind of graduate and you're your own person. But kind of the purpose of basic training, and you think about it, is everyone laughs. You have to take a T-shirt and fold it into a 6-inch square, and the seams have to be perfect. And we literally were using tweezers to make sure the seams on your T-shirt were perfect. And it's not about can you fold a T-shirt into a 6-inch square, right? Because most people given that task can figure it out. The thing is, under stress, under pressure, can you do this consistently so that when I go to you and say, hey, this jet needs a quarter turn on the wrench, they mean a quarter turn. They don't mean a half turn. They don't mean 3/4 turn. It's like, can you follow directions under extreme pressure and stress? If you can do that by folding a T-shirt, we'll let you touch a jet, right? And so that's kind of the mindset, and they grow you through it. And man, anyway, it's the best thing I ever did. And 27 years later, it's like, wow, that was pretty cool. So
at first, was it like, what the heck did I get myself into?
No, I never got that part.
Really? So you were just like hooked from the beginning.
Yeah.
How much of like your family's lineage there, your dad played into that?
At the time, my brother was also in the Air Force, so he went in just prior to me. So I had a little bit of understanding of kind of what I was getting into. And then of course, dad's service, and it was just. For me, it was this, I had this sense of patriotism where it was like, I had the opportunity to do this. And it was just like, I'm not going to squander it.
That is an interesting mindset that I love. Your earlier point of some people look at it as, oh, it's my only option, right? It's like your fallback. If 1, 2, 3 don't work out, then I'll just join the military. Like the best, the one that, 27 years later, you saw this as an opportunity. Insane. Like in the best way possible, I say insane.
It's an opportunity. It's a calling, right? This is where I was destined to be. And so you just take advantage of it, and you just say, I'm going to make the most of it and do well. And, they call it salute smartly, right? Just do what you're asked and within reason, obviously, and do what you're supposed to do, and you'll get through it.
Yeah. And you talk about why is the T-shirt? It's like this attention to detail, and like the age old saying of how you do anything is how you do everything. Correct. Right? So when you're under extreme duress in the heat of whatever it is, like you need to be able to operate, as efficient and effective as possible. Right. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So you go through that 6 weeks, you're kind of going on. And at what point did you, like would you say you're a lifer, like you're a lifelong career airman. At what point in the journey you're like, yep, this is what I'm doing? When
I joined, I kind of always thought I would do 20 years, right? That was kind of
because that's the retirement age, right?
That's what you do to retire. And so my thought was, this is what I'm going to do. But you sign my first contract was a 6-year contract. So at the end of 6 years, I could say, yeah, that's not what I thought, right? But so 6 years into it, I'm like, of course I'm doing another 6, And then now you're at 12, and you're like, well, I'm halfway there, more than
you're over it. You're on the back. You're the back side of it.
So I could do 6 more, and then
you get to 18, you're like,
yeah, I'm not leaving now.
Is there a 2-year deal or like?
There's 4 years and 6 years,
okay.
But for me, it was always, do 6. I'm not going anywhere. This is fun.
So speaking of that, you got to go see the world. Yep. Legitimately, right? Like where did you end up getting stationed at?
A lot of stuff I did was stateside, but I went over to Hungary, Turkey, just outside of Bosnia for a little while. Been to Germany, been to France. Hungary was the eye opener for me. And so, I love all my brothers and sisters who served in the military, and I'll make fun of them just for a little bit, and they will appreciate this, knowing it's come from good humor. But so my first deployment was to Hungary, and they said, hey, you're going over to Tazar Air Base in Hungary, and it's classified. You can't tell anybody, all this good stuff. And I'm like, okay, this is secret mission, And I come home from work that day, and can't say a word. I can't tell my wife what's going on. I really am just kind of sworn to secrecy. We're watching television, and the news all of a sudden tells her where I'm going. And I'm like, I don't know how they know. But
They're not supposed to know that.
But you need to watch that, And then, so anyway, so we go over to Hungary, and we end up I was in air traffic control at the time, and we ended up working with Hungarian air traffic controllers, which are, in Hungary, an officer. It's a little more elite than it is here. There's a huge definition or separation between the enlisted and the officer corps in the Hungarian Air Force. And so air traffic controllers in Hungary were officers, very elite, very rich, very well off to do for their country. And I remember just before I deployed, I'm going back a little bit, this was 97, and I just bought a new computer, and it didn't have the right video card, so I bought a new video card for it, and the video card had a TV tuner on it, so I could plug my television into my computer and watch TV on my computer. Something that, generations today has no idea, no concept of. And
at the moment, you're like, is this Star Trek? The next generation?
Right. I'm high tech, right? But I'm having trouble getting the right driver. And I couldn't get it to work. And next thing I know, I'm deployed. And so when I left, that computer was not able to watch television the way I wanted to. Anyway, long story short, I get there and I'm talking to a Hungarian air traffic controller about this, and he doesn't have a television. He doesn't have a computer, let alone interfacing the two. So for me, that was kind of that first eye opener.
In 97?
In 97, yeah. As an officer, as an elite member of the military, no computer, no television. It's just how they lived. It was a whole different. Where we were in Hungary was an interesting spot. But that was my first eye opening of America's pretty special.
Yeah. Oh my.
Yeah. That was it. That was for me. That was the eye opener.
That's 28 years ago.
Yeah.
97, 28 years. Like. That's like I just feel like I was born in 97, so yeah, 28 years.
Yeah, I'm in Hungary and you're being born.
Yeah, and it's like, but then in the people in Hungary, like the officers there, they don't have. That guy didn't have a computer.
We met a farmer, and he lived about a mile from the air base, and so we ended up talking to him. And this guy, I forget, probably 90 years old or something. He's very old, but we talked to him through a translator. This guy has never been more than a mile away from his property his entire life, 90-some years. Never been more than a mile away from this house. It's a whole different world.
I could go on an afternoon walk and accidentally get a mile away.
Yeah. And he's happy as can be. He doesn't know any better, right? Of course, there's no internet and all that stuff. He's just farming the field, living his life, and so again, that was my first eye opener of like America's special and different.
And you said you kind of moved around right from South Carolina up to Maine, kind of along the East Coast there. Then you were in San Antonio, so you had seen a decent chunk of the U.S. at that point. Was that your first time abroad?
It was. Yeah.
So you touched down. I was like, going in there, what were you expecting?
The joke that I was getting to earlier is the Air Force is kind of the prima donnas of the military, right? So when we deployed, everyone's like, oh, you're in the Air Force, you're going to be staying in a 5-star hotel, you're going to have it all made. And we landed on a C-1, we flew into Germany, hopped on a C-130, and we sat, shoulder to shoulder, knee to knee, flying in through Bosnia and then into Hungary. When we landed, it's just a barren base, right? There's not a lot going on, but you just see for hundreds of yards, all these tents, and they call it Tent City. Hungary was a staging base for the operation that was down in Bosnia. So the army soldiers would come in and out of Hungary to kind of relax, get away from the stress of the fighting and the whatever they were doing. So we were a staging base outside there, and there were, I don't even remember now, but thousands, it feels like thousands of tents, boom, 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 right down the road, just tent. I remember, I walked in, they said, hey, here's your blanket, here's your cot, and they said, you're in tent number D4 or whatever. And my first reaction was, I'm in the Air Force.
Where's my hotel?
Yeah, I'm not sleeping in a tent, sir, And so we all of a sudden we opened the flap to the tent, and it's a regular old, it's called a GP medium, but it's just a green tent. People who'd been before us, they'd had some plywood, and so they kind of built it out. And so when you walk in, there was a little bit of a hallway, plywood hallway, and there was like 4 or 5 bedrooms, and then there was like a little living room in the middle of this tent with a television, a microwave, and a heater. And so there was 4 or 5 of us in this GP medium. And again, I'm totally upset with this. This is not what I signed up for. This was not the standard I was expecting. It didn't take long for me to walk across the road and pull the flap back on an army tent. And I looked in, same exact tent, 10 cots on this side, 10 cots on that side, and that's where they say 20 to a tent, and we're 4 to a tent. I'm like, Okay, I'm not.
All right, this isn't too bad.
We can do this. Yeah.
What makes it that way? Like, why is it like 4 of you guys, 5 of you guys, 20 of them?
I think for a lot of time we were there a little longer, or we were in that tent longer. They were deployed longer. But they were, again, they're in the middle of the mess, and we're a staging base. Everything comes in here, supplies come in here, and then they truck them down into Bosnia. So I think in that sense we were just there on that particular post a little longer. So, when you're coming in for 3 days, you don't have time to build walls.
Yeah,
right?
that makes sense.
And then it's just the sheer volume of, there was thousands of them and probably 50 or 60 of us, right? So we had an Air Force tent city and then an Army tent city. No shall the two combine.
Yeah, right. Okay, so and what's the conflict that's going on?
They called it Operation Joint Guard and Joint Forge down in Bosnia. And, it's been a while since I kind of got into the details of it. And I kind of stay away from the why are we here and more of the what do you need me to do while I'm here. And because I think sometimes, even today, we get so wrapped up in the why is, and it's good to question, don't get me wrong, but I think the military really relies on, I'm trusting my leadership. My leadership sent me here, and so therefore I'm going to do what they've asked me to do while I'm here. And so our job was really just to make sure the planes come in and out safely, and that's kind of what I focused on. And stayed there.
That is an interesting piece, because if you spend too much time online or whatever, you could convince you're like, and then all of a sudden it's like descent,
right?
And you're there for how long? 9 months, 8 months?
Yeah, we were there 6 months. Yep.
6 months. So it's like you got to be here for 6 months, and it's like you're reading whatever, doing whatever, and like convincing yourself of like you start asking questions up the chain and whatnot, and it's like, hey, I mean, you're at the time early 20s, mid 20s maybe, and it's like, all right, boss, like let's pump the brakes a little bit and like let whoever's the ones that have been doing this for a long time.
Right. You got to follow orders, but and I want to say, it sounds kind of silly to say it so blindly, especially in today's day and age, but the reality is you just have to trust your leadership. And so when you get to the point where you can't trust your leadership, it's time to get out. But don't fight the machine, right? So either be part of the machine or get out of the machine. The military really relies on, we're here to do this. You just kind of got to get it done. And I think most members of the military, that's how we operate. It's like, what do you need me to do? I'll go do it. And then I think sometimes we learn years later, shoot, that probably wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, and it's like in the moment, that's really hard.
Yeah.
It's really difficult because on the other side, if you had an organization where everyone got to have a say in an idea, you would not get anything done.
Right.
Like literally nothing would ever happen, and it would be Switzerland or whatever it is.
Right.
That's really hard. It's almost you like shorten up the site where it's like, hey, it's not this bigger mission. It is this mission of getting planes in and out safely.
Right.
And from when I think of air traffic controller, I think of like, isn't that like the most stressful job on earth?
So I was
for like a commercial.
Yeah. I was on the maintenance side, so my job was to make sure the equipment worked.
Oh, okay.
And so that was easy, and no stress there. But many good friends of mine are air traffic controllers, and watching them plug in. And when you get to the point where planes are coming and going, you can't just pause, right? You're like, hey, I'm going to take a break for just a minute. That'll be there when I get back. Like, planes are coming and going, so there's always that constant pressure, and and there's not a lot of do-overs.
No,
right?
I mean, like, especially it's 2025, like
right.
all the stuff that we've seen lately, and that's obviously doesn't go back to like, the fault, not an air traffic, but it's like you see stuff coming on, and it's like you're telling people something, and bad things happen, and you're like, that's stressful.
Yeah.
And it's like you get like for 8 hours or however long their shift is,
right?
Especially like JFK. Like that job, no thank you.
Yeah, 3 or 4 runways at the time. Like, no.
I'm chilling on that.
They
one.
work in teams, they work in shifts.
Yeah.
It's all pretty structured. But yeah, no, it was. One of the my kind of neat stories of being in Hungary is there was an aircraft called an RC-12, which is like a little C-12 aircraft, but it had a lot of radio and reconnaissance information on it. And I remember one morning, it was. I mean, you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, kind of foggy, and all of a sudden, so my job was to make sure the radar was working and the radar system was tuned and everything was accurate. I was in the room listening to a controller talking to an aircraft, and they have what's called a precision approach where literally the pilot can fly with his eyes closed just by listening to the controller. You're too high, you're too low, you're too far left, too far right, turn, pull up, pull down. And so literally, on course, on glide path, on course, left of course. And so the controller is like every X amount of seconds has to issue a command, and the pilot is literally just responding to what he's hearing. No instruments, no nothing. It's possible to land that easily. So this plane's coming in, and the controller's saying you're on course, you're on glide path, on course, on glide path. And there's a certain point, 250 feet off the ground, where the controller says you're at decision height, meaning it's your decision, do you want to land or not? And I'm telling you, you're 250 feet above the runway, right where you're supposed to be, do you want to land or not? So on course, on glide path, going back and forth, and the controller says, at decision height. The pilot goes, runway not in sight, going around. So 200 feet off the runway, he can't see the runway. So he takes off and he goes around. Comes back around, does the same exact thing. Controller goes, at decision height. And the pilot goes, I can't see it, going around. I'm like, oh my goodness, now what are we gonna do? And so maybe we're gonna have to send him to another airport or something. And so he comes in the third time, and just before they start that process, he says, obviously when you're coming down the 250 feet, that process of pulling up, you go under 250 and then you pull up above it. And so the the pilot said, when I made the decision to go around, I still, I eventually saw that you were correct. But at that point, I've already committed to going back in the air. So on the third take, he's like, I'm just going to trust you. And, plane comes in at decision height. The pilot probably closes his eyes and landed perfectly. And so that was, to me, that was kind of like, wow, this is kind of cool. Like the precision of being able to put an aircraft on the ground. And this is back in 97, right? I'm sure we got much better technology now.
Trust you have to have in this guy that you may have never actually met in person.
And he probably Hungarian. He could be Hungarian, right? He could have been, this time it wasn't, but very easily we were there kind of working with the Hungarian Air Force. A Hungarian guy speaking English going, turn left, turn, whatever. That's not the Hungarian accent.
That's right. Spot on.
Yeah.
Spot on right there. Man, that's wild. Just the trust. But then it goes back to, specifically around like the U.S. Armed Forces, like the shaved heads, right? Yep. It's like, I trust these people. Yep. I'm willing to sacrifice whatever it might be.
You can fold a T-shirt into a 6-inch square. You can probably put an airplane on the ground.
Yeah, there's a little bit of, there may be a few steps of math in there. Yeah, right.
But the concept is the same.
Okay, so then, that was like back in 97. You end up going for, another 20 years or so.
Yep.
If you had like a few just pinnacle moments throughout your career within the Air Force, what would those be?
Yeah, so I went back and forth to Hungary quite a few times. And I go for 6 months at a time, then went for 3 months, and then went for a shorter time again. And again, every time I went, it was kind of one of the things that really kind of was interesting for me was every time I deployed, I took my friends with me, right? And so for us, a deployment in the military is kind of like a Super Bowl, right? It's kind of like hey, I've been in the military for X amount of years. I've been training. I want to go do what I'm supposed to be doing. So most of us, when we deploy, it's fun because you're actually doing what you've been trained to do. And then we bring all of our buddies with us, And so what's interesting is I didn't think about it much at the time, but as I get older, I start looking back is the family doesn't go. You just leave a hole in this family's life. For me, it's a party. It's not a party, but it's a vacation. It's something new, but I have some familiarity. The family just is like, okay, dad's not here. And so that void just kind of gets missing. And then for me, so again, before FaceTime, before text messaging, we had one computer in one tent down the ramp. We'd wait in line to send an email. There would be 5 or 6 people in line, and you'd get to hop on the computer and type in your little email and send it off to your family. And maybe tomorrow I'll come get back in line and see if anyone replied. Understanding what the family goes through kind of makes you go, you appreciate it a little bit differently. And many heroes have worn the uniform, but man, every single one of them had a family member back home that's equally impressive. And so that's kind of the cool part.
That is interesting because, like, obviously, like, leaving is hard, but there's new excitement, there's challenge, there's a mission.
Right.
Like, and that's what you're called to do. Like, 27 years, you're called to, like, go accomplish missions.
Right.
But then at home, the mission is, like, sit around and wait.
Yes, survive, right? And I remember one of my deployments, it rained all night, and we had to be at the airport like 3 or 4 in the morning or something crazy like that. And I remember we were renting a townhouse at the time, and I was getting ready, and it was stressful because you're leaving for 6 months, and it's just stressful to a relationship. And I remember going, and all of a sudden we walked down the stairs to the garage, and there's 4 inches of water in the basement. And I looked at my wife and said, call a plumber. Like, I can't fix this. I have to leave. There's nothing I can do. Like, we both discovered it at the exact same time as we're walking out the door. In a normal relationship, you would be like, all right, I'll be here to help you with this. And no. And so now I'm going across the world with no communication. Good luck getting the the water out of the basement.
Good luck, dear. That's tough looks. I mean, what I've loved as we're about to get into when we're talking about Folds of Honor, it's not just a sacrifice made by the men and women who serve. Like, yes, that is the largest contribution to it,
Right.
but just as much as there's families, like I don't know enough, but from the sample size, I think you might be the anomaly that like, dad, super awesome, like this is amazing versus like how many families are like, I wish my dad was just here.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
So I'm very fortunate, right? So 27 years. So after those handful of deployments in Hungary, Turkey, all that stuff, for me, I think I missed 5 or 6 anniversaries in a row being overseas. And so that was starting to take a toll. And in the grand scheme of things, I was nobody in the military. Nothing heroic, nothing. I was always in a safe place and always, pretty well guarded. It wasn't stressful in that regard. So there are some amazing stories of military members doing heroic things that I always kind of look up to. But for me, after 6 or 7 years of doing that, it was like, it's time to start a family. I can't keep being gone every summer. And trying to raise a family. So I went into recruiting at that point. And so my career transitioned to recruiting, and I did 17 years in the recruiting service. So the early part of my career did a little bit. And then for 17 of the 27 years, I was stateside in recruiting. But it was interesting. I went into recruiting in June of 2001. My wife ended up, we got pregnant, and my daughter was due September 11th, 2001. That was her due date. The thought was I would transition out of the busy side of the Air Force for what I was doing and just more stability to start a family. September 6th, my daughter ended up being born instead of September 11th. And then 5 days later, the world completely changed, right? So September 11th hit. And so I have a 5-year-old baby, a 5-month-old baby, 5-day-old baby. What was really hard for me was the units that I had always deployed with, they went over to Afghanistan. I didn't go because I stayed in recruiting. And so because of my career change, they all take off. All these guys, great friends of mine that I've deployed many times with, they take off and I don't go. So I always kind of had that, I wouldn't say survivor's guilt, but that kind of sense of I should be going, right? But that's not what I do now. My job is to make sure the military is staffed and equipped. And so it goes back to our earlier conversation is I just need to focus on what does the mission need of me? The mission needs me to find more people. And so, but for the longest time, and I think that kind of ties into what we're going to talk about in a little bit, is I always kind of felt like, man, I should have done more. 27 years in the military, I should have done more. I should have done more, and I should have done more. And so it kind of gets me to the point where I just want to continue doing.
That is an interesting piece that I think separates the people who were called to do this. I think that some people hear that like, oh, wow, you switched to recruiting. How lucky are you?
Right.
Like how you don't have to go to Afghanistan. Wow, you really caught a break there.
Yeah.
But then those that are called to serve are like, how lucky am I? Like those are my buddies. That's my team.
I felt like I abandoned them, honestly. I really did. I felt this huge sense of they all left and they all left. They did their thing. They all came back. So in that sense, very fortunate, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't go. And so now I have a whole group of friends that have a whole different set of stories that I'm not a part of. And I wanted to be there. That was the whole reason I joined was for that, right? There is no more patriotic opportunity to serve your country than the week or two after 9/11.
Yeah.
And here I am sitting in a recruiting office going.
But is it like, are the phone's ringing off the hook?
Yeah. So this is a funny story. So the phones are ringing off the hook. We ended up moving. Our office was off base at the time, so they ended up moving us on base for more security. I worked out of the dining facility, out of the chow hall.
Where are you at in the world?
New
at
Hampshire.
This point? New Hampshire.
New Hampshire.
Okay. At some point, we're going to get into how you ended up in New
I know,
York.
right? How did you get to? Isn't this the Get In podcast?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Not the Get In podcast.
Yeah.
But so anyway, so I'm in the dining facility, literally in a makeshift office because we're trying to be more secure. And I get a phone message and it says, "Hi, my name is Kahim Abdul Rahim." He's like, "Hi, my name is Kahim Abdul Rahim. I'm in the Boston Air Traffic Control Tower. I want to talk to you." This is 3 days after 9/11. I'm not answering that. That's a voicemail, right? I'm like, I'm not calling you back. A couple of days later, "Hey, it's Kahim Abdul Rahim. I'm the air traffic control, Boston Center. Call me." So I called the security police. I'm like, come to find out, Kahim Abdul Rahim was serving the United States Army. He was an air traffic controller with the FAA. He wanted to switch over to the Air Force. It was that simple.
That would be really hard.
Yeah.
For him too.
Right.
Where it's like right in the 5 days, the 2 weeks after, and it's like he wants to step up and serve, and
Yeah, so the air
that's
traffic
hard.
control, job in the Army is different than the Air Force, and so a lot of guys in the Army, air traffic control is your specialty, but you're soldier first, and so they don't do a lot of talking to airplanes in the Army. As much as the Air Force certainly does.
Yeah.
So because he worked for the FAA, he wanted to get more involved in the air traffic control operations. So switching to the Air Force to him made sense. But yeah, it was just, for me, it was one of those, I'm not returning this call.
Yeah,
You're going to have to talk to the cops, sir.
Yeah, that one goes a little bit above run up the chain of command there.
Yeah.
So I mean, in the days, being in recruiting, the days after 9/11, think about call volume before you left on for your daughter to be born. Call volume there, like how many people are calling in saying like, I can't wait to join.
Yeah, then you're calling people trying to find them, right? And then the phones, they rang off the hook for patriotism. People just wanted to get involved, and I think a lot of people, most people don't fully understand. It was like kind of like I want to join. Like, okay, well, if you join today, it's 2 years before you're qualified to do anything, for the most part. So it's not like you raise your right hand and all of a sudden they hand you a rifle and off you go. There's some training, and you got basic training. You have your tech training.
Like, what was the shortest amount of time, if you had to guess? Like
a year.
A year. So 12 months. Someone was like a banker on Wall Street or whatever. I mean, I don't know if they.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some bankers on Wall Street that do, right? You're a host of the Get In podcast,
right?
And then 12 months later, you are in Afghanistan.
Yeah, because we're not going to send you. Now, this is strictly for the Air Force. Maybe the Army has some different rules. Marine Corps has some different rules, but for us, you're highly specialized in what we need you to do. So if I'm bringing you in to be a jet mechanic, I can't really send you to be a jet mechanic until you know how to fix jets. Right.
Yeah.
So
if I've worked on big rigs all my life, it's like, hey, we got a little bit of training there.
This might be a little different. So for the most part, it was, if you join today, it's going to take me 3 or 4 weeks to find you a basic training slot to get you in. You're going to go 6 to 8 weeks of basic training. Then you're going to go through 8 to 52 weeks of tech training. Then you come back and you just got school knowledge. Think about a 4-year college degree. Like, all you have is book smarts. You have no real world experience. So then we have to bring you back, train you. So it's a couple good 2-3 years normally from the time someone joins before they're really eligible to deploy by themselves. So
I'm like looking up how much did enlistment go up, right immediately after 9/11.
Yeah.
I mean, I just have to assume just, patriotism a ton. And it's like, cool. Like, if it's 2 years or whatever, just get me involved now.
I want to be in. I want to be part of it.
Yeah.
Just before 9/11, around August timeframe, I had a guy come to. He was in the actual active duty Air Force, and he separated because same thing. It was too busy, and so he did his 4 years and got out. And then around August timeframe, he's like, my life is settled down. I'm older now. I want to finish my career, so I want to join the Guard. And so he called me and said, I want to join the Guard. Again, this is August. No idea September 11th is coming. And he's like, one of the reasons I got out of the military is I deployed too much. And so he goes, I'm not able to do that to the same level I was. And I remember looking at him and going, well, if you join here, you're probably not going anywhere because our cops aren't that busy. There's not a lot going on in the world. And I convinced him to join based on the fact that he was very upfront with me. Deployment is not something I'm looking for. And okay, no worries. Sign here, sir. And so he did. He enlisted like a week or two before September 11th, and September 12th, he's gone. So that damn recruiter lied to me.
That's tough.
It's like, I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, oh my God. Like, who's I wonder how many people joined September 10th.
Right.
Thinking
right.
like,
okay,
yeah, this is what I want to do. And it's like the next day you're like, shit.
Yeah.
Things are real now.
Shit just got real.
I want to take a minute to tell you about my friends at JC Hart and the opportunity that they are giving to Get In listeners. They are offering summer savings of up to 2 months off of rent at these brand new communities, East Bank in Noblesville, The Edge on the north side of Indy, and Wheelhouse in Westfield. If you're looking for an awesome place to live, you need to hit up my friends at JC Hart. Go to homeisjchart.com/Nate and check out all their cool properties. Or if you know someone that's looking for an apartment here in Central Indiana, send that link to them and JC Hart can take them on a personalized tour. You know me, I'm all about Indiana, and JC Hart is as Hoosier as it gets, and they do some amazing things in our community. And they also wanted me to let you know that they are always looking for awesome people to join their team. They just made the list of best places to work in Indiana for the 13th time. Check out their open positions at homeisjchart.com. Now let's get back into the episode. Obviously, career goes on, ends up 27 years, and you end up retiring back in 2019. 6 years ago. But like your call to service You said you still had that. So how did you get involved with the Folds of Honor program?
Somewhere in the middle of my career, my recruiting career, I ended up working at the Pentagon, living in San Antonio, working for the Pentagon, very close commute.
Yeah,
Not too far. And
just a time zone or two, right?
Taxi, an airplane, and a subway. But yeah, other than that, you get to work real quick.
There you go.
Living in San Antonio, working out of the Pentagon up in DC, I got involved with marketing because I was in recruiting. So my job was kind of help with the marketing team, and we were looking for different ways to kind of promote the Air Guard as a way to serve, and especially in recruiting, our job's always looking for more people. And if you think back, the Marine Corps has the Toys to Tots program, right? And so that's sanctioned by the Marine Corps. And when you think of Toys for Tots, you think of the United States Marine Corps, right? And there's that cool side of the Marines that wearing the uniform and they're some of our elite, right? And so being a Marine's pretty dang cool, but you kind of have to show the soft side to get people to be interested. And so the Toys for Tots program, something like that, we were looking for in the Air Force. We had found a country singer or some people to write songs for, just some little stuff, but it just wasn't getting any traction. And so...
Wait, who was a country singer?
Laura Bryna. If you Google Laura Bryna, she ended up writing a song for us, and sweet lady. She's still out doing her thing, but we did a little stint with her for a little while.
That's kind of sick.
Yeah. It never got the traction we wanted. It's no Toys for Tots, right? But Laura's a great gal. So we were kind of looking for something we could do to just kind of promote the military. And because I was living in San Antonio, and I visited many of the Air Guard bases around the country. So most of them I'd been to at least once or twice. And so I was flying all over the country, meeting different recruiters, understanding what their job was, and kind of helping build a program around enlisting people, and then some marketing. This is where my life completely changed, and things just got really, really different. I'm coming up on very selfish. It's just the way I always want to take care of me first. That was how I kind of was. Good, bad, or indifferent. That's who I was, right back in the day. And so all of a sudden, I was flying everywhere, and then I started collecting air miles, and like, holy cow, I'm getting a lot of air miles, and oh, there's some perk. And then next thing you know, I became platinum status on American Airlines. Woo-hoo. And then I start looking, I'm like, well, executive platinum is even better. So I want to be executive platinum on American. So I start looking at my flight schedule, and I'm like, man, if I fly 8 more times this year, I'll be executive platinum on American. For those who don't know, executive platinum on American means you buy a $200 ticket, and it's first class as soon as you hit send, right? You automatically get upgraded to first class, like 99% of the time, right? If American Airlines is listening, it's not 100%, I get it. But if you're executive platinum, they take good care of you. And so the perk of it's like diamond level for Delta or whatever the scenarios are. And so I'm only 8 flights short this year. If I fly 8 more times, I get this status. So I'm living in San Antonio, and I'm like, how do I get 8 flights? Yeah, I had some tools that I use as a frequent flyer. And I'm like, if I leave here at 6 a.m. and I fly from San Antonio to Dallas, and then go from Dallas to Oklahoma City, and then back to Dallas, and then up to Tulsa, and then back to Dallas, and then over to Austin, and then back to Dallas, and then back to San Antonio the same day. That's 8 flights. I can get this done. So I booked the flight. It cost me $600. I paid for it out of my pocket. And
wait, $600 to get all those
8 flights? Yeah, this is 2005.
Okay, I'm very intrigued of where this story is going. Okay, so you booked these 6 flights.
Yep, 8 flights.
8 flights.
8 flights. So San Antonio to Dallas, Oklahoma City, Dallas, Tulsa, Dallas, Austin, Dallas, back home to San Antonio at 9 o'clock at night. So left at 6 a.m., got home at 9 p.m. and went to San Antonio, right? So it was a crazy day of flying, but I got my executive platinum status. It was worth it in that sense.
What?
Yeah. Okay. There's a thing for frequent flyers, there's a thing called mileage run. And so you buy flights just to get the miles because the perks that come with it. So after this, for me, all next year, everything I flew was first class. Didn't matter where I bought the ticket, how I bought the ticket.
How do you keep the status?
By flying.
Classic, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, you're hooked. I mean, enough to spend not only $600, but an entire day.
Yeah.
All right, so
I'm doing all that, just minding my own business, right? And so on the flight from Dallas up to Tulsa, And so what I started noticing is, of course, American Airlines, Dallas is their hub, one of their hubs, right? And so the plane that
After
went
your fourth time going through it for a day, yeah, it might be a hub.
Yeah, here's an idea. But the plane that went from Dallas to Oklahoma City, same crew, same plane, went right back to Dallas, right? So the plane just went out, picked up people, and came right back. Up there, picked up people, came right back. And so I started recognizing that. And so when we flew up to Tulsa, at the time, I didn't have any status, so I was still in the back of the airplane.
At the time, I didn't have any status.
Yeah, I was nobody, And anyway, so we fly up to Tulsa, and I've been flying all day at this point, and so no reason for me to get off the plane if I don't have to. So I ask, I'm like, hey, I'm going right back with you. Any chance I could just stay on the plane? I don't need to get off. And the flight attendant said, yeah, I guess for whatever reason, they let me stay on the plane. And so I stayed on the plane, and then she actually said, as a matter of fact, this flight coming back from Tulsa to Dallas is a little empty, so there's a seat up in first class. I can move you up into first class.
Did you tell them about your excursion?
Oh yeah, they knew. Yeah, she knew. She recognized it as what they call a mileage run, and she's like, oh yeah, I got it. And I guess I was platinum at the time. I wasn't fully no status, but. Anyway, so they recognized it, and so they put me up in first class. And so from the rest of the day, or for the rest of that flight, I was in first class from Tulsa back to Dallas. And so I'm sitting on the plane. I'm by myself, basically. The cleaning crew's coming around, cleaning up, whatever. And a gentleman, they start to board. And a gentleman walks down the ramp, and he's on his cell phone sitting and talking. And he ended up sitting right next to me. He was in first class as well. So, there's only 2 seats. And so he's sitting right next to me. And he's just talking away. And I'm not really paying attention because I don't care, right? It's all about me. I'm Mr. getting executive platinum today, But he's talking on his cell phone. And, it's impossible not to hear the person sitting next to you, talking on their cell phone. And so I pick up what he's saying. And he's trying to schedule a physical. And then he's trying to schedule it on a Saturday. And I'm like, well, not a lot of doctors' offices open on a Saturday, right? And so I start listening a little more, and I figure, oh, he's a pilot. Oh, he's in the Air Guard. Oh, I'm in the Air Guard. Dude, I've been flying all day. I'm bored, right? So I'm trying to find a way to say, hey, I'm in the military too, Hey,
what's up, dude?
Hey, what's up, dude? So he hangs up his phone, and I somehow kind of, I don't remember exactly how, but I think I was wearing a T-shirt with the logo on it. I'm kind of doing one of these, kind of leaning over, hoping he sees it. So we start talking, and it's a 40-minute flight. What do you do? I'm in the Air Guard. What do you do? I'm in the Air Guard. Oh, great. I'm a pilot. Oh, great. I'm in recruiting. Oh, yeah. Blah, blah, blah. Somehow he mentioned charity. I'm not really fully paying attention, kind of. And so I said, yeah, we do some charity work. My wife is a school teacher, and there's an organization called Donors Choose, where teachers go and make wish lists, and then people, donate or whatever. So we had done a little bit of work with them, just maybe small contributions here and there. But I was kind of proud of that. I was like, hey, I'm doing charity work too, mister. And he's like, well, Mike, let me tell you about what I'm doing. He tells me the story that changed my life. And so he said he's an F-16 pilot in the Air Force, Air Guard. He's seen the other side of war, obviously, and he's been doing that. And his family owns a golf course up in Grand Haven, Michigan. And so he was, flying, and one afternoon, he was coming home, and they landed in Chicago on his way over to Grand Haven, Michigan. And when they landed, wasn't really paying attention originally, but he noticed that in first class of that particular flight was a corporal in dress greens, and again, thought nothing of it because it happens all the time. But they landed in Chicago. It was pouring down rain, and the pilot comes over the PA and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, would you remain on board for just a moment? We have an American hero on board." And Dan's like, his name's Dan, and Dan looks at, he's like, wow, that's, they're honoring that corporal by letting him off first or whatever. And the pilot goes, he continues on and says, "We're carrying the remains of Corporal Brock Buckland. His identical twin brother, Brad, has escorted him 7,000 miles home from Iraq." So Dan starts figuring out, like, oh, the guy in first class is the brother. He's brought his brother home from Iraq. So he's sitting over the cargo hold. He looks out the window, and he sees the flag draped casket come out. He notices the family on the tarmac. And he sees 4-year-old Jacob Buckland, recognizing and greeting his dad for the last time, in essence. And Dan goes, man, and all the times I've been doing what I do for the Air Force, I never saw this side of it, right? We're mission first. What's the mission ask us to do? The mission doesn't say take care of your family. The mission says take care of the country, right? And so, not in a bad way, but so he witnesses that. And he then says, well, I'm going to the golf course. Let's have a little golf outing. Let's raise some money for that 4-year-old boy that I just witnessed. And so they host a golf event. They raised $8,513. They called a success. And, and that was kind of how the Folds of Honor was born. But he tells me that story. So I'm sitting on an airplane. I've been flying all day. And all of a sudden he tells me the story. And I'm like, how does the Air Guard help you do this? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I've been looking for someone like you. We've been trying to do some sort of Toys for Tots. Let's see if we can get behind this and put some money. What do you need? And he's like, well, I'm on my way down to Florida right now to talk to the PGA of America, to talk to them, the PGA, and tell them this story and see if I can get the PGA involved, because he's also a professional golfer. Yeah, F-16 pilot and a PGA pro. Like,
and a philanthropist.
Yeah.
This guy. Who is this guy?
Dan Rooney. Dan Rooney is, he's our founder. So he's an amazing man. So anyway, so he tells me the story and I'm like, I'm all in. I don't know what this means, but I'm all in. And so he hands me his card and we get off the plane and I fly to Dallas and then I go to Austin, then I go back to Dallas and I go back at night.
I can't wait to get home. I just have to go to 3 more cities before I can really work on this.
So he gave me his card and I just said, there's got to be a way to make this our mission, and whatnot. So I come back and I'm in San Antonio and my boss is obviously up in DC. And so I tell him about this encounter. Hey, I found our Toys for Tots. I found our thing. At the time, it wasn't even called Folds of Honor. It was called Fallen Heroes Foundation. And I said, we need to get behind this Fallen Heroes Foundation thing, and we can sponsor them, and they can be our philanthropic event that the Air Guard does. So we kind of, the buzz kind of starts picking up, and people are getting excited. And meanwhile, Dan's off doing his own thing, and I made no promises, right? Like, hey, I'll see what I can do, and kind of loosely kept in touch. And then so we get to the point where I called Dan. I'm like, Dan, my boss is interested in hearing your story. So would you fly up to DC and, tell him your story, tell him what you told me, and we'll see if we can do some sort of sponsorship. So he said, sure. So we arranged this. Coincidentally enough, I used my air miles and I got him a flight to there, and I used my hotel points to put him up in a hotel in DC.
There it is. Come on.
And I get him hooked up. He comes to DC and we had, I can't remember exactly, but we have a room full of generals and colonels, and there's probably 8 or 9 military leaders in the room. And Dan comes up and tells them the story that I just did. Hey, I was on an airline flight. I saw the casket come out, and I want to give scholarship to families who paid the ultimate sacrifice. And so he tells that story, and if you've ever heard Dan tell the story, it is just it's captivating when he tells it, because he witnessed it firsthand. And so he tells the story, and the room is silent, and I'm thinking, yeah, this is it, right? Home run. He leaves. The generals talk about it. Colonels talk about it, and it doesn't really go anywhere. And I didn't understand that, and I still don't really understand that. And so my particular boss, Colonel Johnson at the time, Randy Johnson, not the baseball player, and coincidentally, I'm going to have lunch with him tomorrow. He doesn't live in town. He's in town just coincidentally. Anyway, so Randy Johnson and I told him the story, and he was kind of impressed, but we couldn't get any traction. And then so fast forward a little bit, many months have gone by, and we had a recruiting conference in Hawaii. Had to go there, right? That's just how.
When you're executive platinum, you have to go everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere, right? So we have a conference in Hawaii. Because I'm an executive platinum, I brought my wife and daughter with me. We all flew first class to Hawaii and back. Anyway, so on our way, keep in mind, I'm in San Antonio. My boss is in DC. No coordination. All we know is Monday morning we have to be in Hawaii, and it's over the weekend. And I've taken my family and we land in LAX, and we go to the Admirals Club, and we're big pimping, and hanging out. And I'm like, let me just check in with the boss and see where he's at. So I called Colonel Johnson and I said, hey, sir, just checking in. See you Monday morning, but how's things and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, where are you at? I said, LAX. He's like, where are you? Where? I'm like, gate 8. He goes, Mike. He's at gate 10. I'm like, interesting. Okay. Well, do you have a minute? I want to chit chat with you. Him and I told my wife and daughter, I said, go to the club, hang out, they'll take good care of you. And him and I are going to go to a different place and just kind of catch up. So we walk in there, and we're sitting at a bar in LAX, and there's a television about where that television is right in front of us. And we're just kind of having a drink, catching up. And preceding this, every time I saw him, I always asked, hey, what are we going to do with Dan Rooney? Like, hey, boss, what's the status of project this? What's the status of this project? Hey, I need your signature here. Hey, any movement with the colonels and generals with Dan Rooney? And I could never get anywhere. And so now we're sitting at LAX and I have him cornered. And I'm like, I'm going to put this thing to bed. And so I'm asking about Project A, B, C and signatures here. And then I said, I'm going to ask, sir, I'm going to ask you this. So what are we doing with Dan Rooney? And he goes, Mike, it's a neat story. It's a great effort, but I just don't think the television is right in front of us. I told you, Dan, when he was flying down to the PGA. They recorded part of his thing, and the PGA made a PSA, public service announcement, that was playing on television. So my boss says, Mike, I just don't think the TV in front of us comes on. It's the commercial with Dan Rooney talking about the Folds of Honor. And at the end, he says, please support the Fallen Heroes Foundation. And my boss looks at me like, did you script this? I'm like, no, sir, I had nothing to do with it. And he looks at me, he's like, let's go ahead and cut the check. And so I called Dan from LAX, and Dan, I just got you $400,000 sponsorship. I don't know what it means yet, but we are going to allow you to be part of the Air Guard story and tell members of the community that the Air National Guard is sponsoring the Folds of Honor, and you'll wear your Folds of Honor, your Air Guard stuff everywhere, and we'll get some good PR out of it. So I called Dan from LAX and I tell him, hey, I got you a sponsorship. We have $400,000. Let's meet next week and we'll figure out what it looks like. I did not know this at the time. I didn't learn this till years later, but Dan was working out of his garage still at this point. With no staff, one-man show, doing everything he can, grinding. And he was to the point where he's like, probably can't do this anymore. It's probably time to close shop, right? Had a good run, did all the right things. And then so when I called him from LAX and said, hey, we have $400,000, and he's like, okay. So he hired his first employee, and then he built what we now are doing $25 to $50 million a year, giving away scholarships. So that's how I got involved. God put me on an airplane and said, sit next to this guy for a little bit, open your heart, listen, and just kind of do what you're supposed to do.
That is, and what year was that?
2005.
2005. Oh, wow. You're still early in your career at that point. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, middle of the road, right?
Yeah. So I retired in 19. So then I just kind of stayed involved with Folds. And then when we moved to Indiana, the military finally transferred me to Indiana. I ended up managing recruiting for the state of Indiana when I retired from here. So when they moved us here,
When did you make it to Indiana?
2010.
2010, okay.
When they sent me here, I told Dan, like, hey, the Folds of Honor was starting to get some traction. And I said, can we form a chapter in Indiana? And it took us a couple years. So I think 2013 is when we finally officially became a chapter. But I said, I want to keep raising money for this organization. And so, the premise was they raised $8,500, gave it to Jacob Buckland as a scholarship, but it doesn't really do a lot, right? $8,500 is great. There's nothing disrespectful about that, but it's not life-changing in that sense. And it didn't go beyond that. And so the mission was to make sure that let's take care of the educational needs of all of the men and women's children and their spouses. And so, we need more than $8,500 to do that. So I said, yeah, when I came to Indiana, I said, I want to help with this fundraising effort. I want to continue doing that. And so can we form a chapter here in Indiana? And then 2013, the Folds of Honor Indiana chapter kind of finally planted their flag at the Legends Golf Course down in Franklin, Indiana originally. And then now we're kind of settled up here in the Carmel Fishers area. So
as you retired, have you been able to start putting more time? And it's like Folds of Honor, like what is the commitment and what are you owning on that?
It's an all volunteer team, right? So we have a board of 5 now, president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. And predominantly what we're doing is we're looking for community partners who are trying to raise money or want to do some charity work, want to sponsor, making a lot of phone calls, just really asking for donations and saying, if you want to sponsor a golf outing or sponsor a gala, or if you want to host your own fishing tournament, host it and then give the proceeds back to Folds of Honor. We'll make sure that 91 cents of every single dollar goes directly to a scholarship.
And the impact you guys have had across the country is incredible. So over 62,000 scholarships have been awarded.
Yeah.
Approximately $290 million in educational impact from the guy on the plane that you happened to just run into. And how long did the Air Corps stay involved?
A couple years, a year and a half. It kind of we just did that one sponsorship, and then it just was hard to get the traction out of it. But we got the seed work done. So we stayed involved for about a year.
There you go. Well, because it's a long process, and I have had a decent amount of nonprofit, whether they're executive directors or founders. It's a hard.
It is.
It's hard.
But it's passion driven, right?
Yeah.
And so usually I'll end kind of a segment with this, is that, there's a lot of different ways in the world to give back. And this may be your passion, but if it's not, you need to go find your passion. Like, if your passion is saving the whales, go be the best whale saver there is. Seriously. There's no disrespect in doing that, and no disrespect in not doing something else. But you need to find where your passion is aligned and then go do it. And so for me, this is where my passion is aligned. So for me, it's a natural transition, a natural fit where I said, yeah, I'm driven to do this. And so when I wake up every single day thinking of the families that, their loved one, I mean, I deployed many times, and never once did I think, what happens if I don't come home, right? Many of our service members, they end up writing letters from the battlefield, right, saying, dear family, if you're reading this, and most of them, thank God, bring them back with them, but a handful of them don't, right? And so,
but even having to go through the exercise of like what you would write in that letter, it's almost like writing your own obituary a little bit, where it's like, and then there's a whole thing of like, you're there in the moment and you're like, damn, I hope I make it back, because if so, like, I wish I had more to do here. I wish I had more to
so much. Yeah. So I never had to write that, because everywhere I went was safe, right? Whatever the term safe means. But I never was in that danger of, like, I knew I was coming home, for lack of a better term, right? We never know what tomorrow promised, but I knew, generally speaking, I was going to be in a
as safe as it could be.
As safe as it could be. I mean, I didn't even carry a gun when I was over there. Like, there was an armory. If I needed one, I could get one, I guess. But it was like, that's how
put
safe.
Put that in perspective. All right, yeah.
Yeah. So I wasn't worried. I was more worried about, was Burger King at the Chow Hall going to have nuggets or not? Versus, am I coming home? And so for many of our members of the military, when they write that letter, of course, or when the family gets it, it's impactful. And so, as we said earlier, the family is the one that carries a lot of that burden when especially when you deploy. But if you don't make it home, it's a whole different void that just never gets filled. And so my mission was to, looking back, at the time that I didn't get to deploy right after 9/11, I'm like, this is my opportunity to continue serving in that capacity, is to take care of them. And so I do it completely as a volunteer. My full-time job, I'm in cybersecurity, not even related to the military, right? And so it's just something we do, like even today, I take the day off to come do this, right? I take the day off my regular job to come volunteer to talk about this. And it's just something that you can't train it, you can't teach it. You just kind of have a passion for it.
I think it all ties back in. Everyone shaves their head.
Yep.
Everyone takes care of each other. We're a team.
Yep.
And this is across branches of the military, right? Like, it could be Marine, Army, Air Force.
Yep. Navy, Coast Guard.
Navy, Coast Guard, absolutely.
Space Force.
People always forget about the Space Force.
Yep.
But it's through that. It's like, hey, we all took this oath to serve our country.
Right.
And some individuals end up paying the ultimate price.
Right.
And then, you talk about, like, you think about your family as you left and deployed every summer and like all those stuff. But you came back, and it's like, not only that gap is forever.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is my way to just kind of continue to serve in a way that I feel like, going into recruiting for 17 years, I feel like there's a good part of the military that I missed, right, in that sense. And so this is my opportunity to say, for my brothers and sisters who served, who either didn't come home or came back a different person, right? A lot of people, yes, just because you come home doesn't mean everything's great. It's my opportunity to take care of those families and to honor their service, honor their sacrifice by continuing now by educating their legacy.
And for Folds of Honor Indiana, are you raising money from Hoosiers to benefit the families of Hoosiers?
That's exactly it. Yep. So we're looking for sponsors and donors in the state of Indiana. The way it's structured is the actual organization has a headquarters in Tulsa. And so Tulsa does all of the logistics and the scholarship applications, but the money that we raise in Indiana, we send down to Tulsa earmarked for Indiana families. So as scholarship recipients apply, they know where they're coming from and where they're going to school. And so they look at the money that we've raised in the state and say,
and match that up.
They match it up.
How many current children are eligible for a Folds of Honor scholarship?
So the eligibility, you can go to the website to read about the eligibility, but the eligibility is you either have to be, killed in action, or killed being while you're served, or disabled. And so the disability rating is 70% or higher. The qualifications change every year based on the available funding, but it's quite a bit. You look at 62,000 scholarships that we've awarded since 2005.
How many Hoosiers have served, whether it's first responder or in the military, and have lost their life or been disabled.
Yeah, I don't know that exact
that
number.
might be a number. I need to like maybe look that one up.
It's too many, I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
you know,
where it's like, okay, you know, if we could do the back of the napkin math, where it's okay, there's 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, whatever that number is,
right.
and then you multiply that by their families, and you get like, and then we need 40 grand per kid, whatever that, you
right.
know, and you
right.
you get to the math where it's like, okay, so the ultimate goal is that if every Hoosier who pays this sacrifice for our country and our state has their family taken care of. I don't know. That's really fascinating to me. And it's, I mean, really, really meaningful work.
It is. And, you know, we start developing relationships with some of these families. I told you earlier about, you know, I never had the chance or never had the need to write that letter, but we have one of our scholarship recipients, Taylor Downing. She was 9 years old when her father was killed, and she has the letter that her dad wrote. And, you know, and at 9, right? It's not something a 9-year-old needs to process. And sometimes when she speaks for us, she'll read that letter. And yeah, it's one of those things that you just can't, you hear it once and it sticks with you forever. But I mean, she's one of 62,000 that we know of. And every year there are people that don't even know that they're eligible for. I talked to a guy yesterday who doesn't know he's eligible for a scholarship for his children. And, you know, it's like, you know, he retired from the Air Force as well, but he's 100% disabled, so he's eligible. And I'm like, he didn't even know about it. So that's kind of why we appreciate having this opportunity is that, you know, if you were in the military and you have a disability rating, or if your spouse was in the military and you know, pay the ultimate sacrifice, go to the website and just see if you're eligible and let us help you. And so that gift of a scholarship, certainly, you know, it does help the financial burden, but I think one of the things it does that we don't really advertise a lot of is it connects you to a family of people who understand you, right? Who can relate. And so that opportunity for healing happens by meeting people who have a very similar story to you, that then when you sit in a room and talk, you know, a lot of times when we hear this, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. But they don't understand it because they didn't go through it the same way. Definitely respectful, definitely appreciate the sacrifice. But when you can talk to someone who's lived it, just like you lived it.
I'm sure people like avoid that conversation, like your friends or your, you know, your peers at school, like don't know how to approach it because they don't know if you're like, you know, national anthem comes on before a ball game. It's like, how does that affect someone who's gone through that and like their, you know, their family has paid the ultimate price.
Right.
That's
yeah.
Like you talk about, you said what, Taylor, is that her name?
Yep. Taylor.
You talk about Taylor, like reading that letter at a gala or whatever. I can go,
yeah.
oh,
not a dry eye in the room when she does it. And she's an amazing young woman.
Take all the money. You could have it. You could have it all.
Yep. Absolutely. So her story is actually very tragic in a sense that she's a dear friend, and she ended up getting to the point where now she's I don't know, mid-20s now. A couple of years ago, she met a guy, and they things were getting serious, and he wanted to propose, and so over Memorial Day weekend, he goes down to. He brings her to go visit her dad's gravesite. And so there they are, him, her, and dad, and he proposes, right? And so dad becomes now part of the proposal. They started charting this amazing life. One of our great sponsors, Anheuser-Busch, brought the Clydesdales to Indy, and they got to ride on the Clydesdales in the Memorial Day, the May parade for Indy, the festival.
Yeah, the 500 Festival Parade.
Yeah. So they ride the Clydesdales in the 500 Festival Parade, and he's a firefighter, and so things are going well, and then tragically he loses his life, and so, and they have kids, and so now she becomes a mom.
Stop.
Yeah, so it's the woman is beyond strong and beyond brave. The courage she has, to live through. Not only did she go through it as a 9-year-old girl, but now she's going through it as a spouse and a mom. So when we come in and say, we can help. I don't know that word help really is the right word, but we're going to love on you, and we're going to take care of you, and we're going to be here for you. And so that's where the money goes. It's like, talk about that. That's why I wake up to do this. Is that, if I can do something to honor his sacrifice, honor her dad's sacrifice by just educating their legacy and giving them a better future and loving on them. That's kind of what, what it's all about.
It's important work.
Yeah.
Wow, that one.
And so again, that's one of 62,000 stories.
The 62,000 is the number that you guys have helped thus far.
Right.
It's like, what's the number? If there was unlimited budget, unlimited money,
right.
I don't wonder what that number would get up to.
Right, absolutely. It probably triple.
Yeah.
Right, easily.
And it's like, that's heavy.
Yep.
It's a very honorable cause, very noble. How can people get plugged in? What are there big events throughout the year that you guys host?
We do. So we have, a lot of times we do a lot of things around golf because our founder is a PGA golf professional, right? So we kind of started in the golf community, but again, we recognize not everyone's a golfer, and so there were opportunities for other people that said, hey, I don't like golf, I like fishing. Okay, well then host a fishing tournament. So what we look for is corporations to say, hey, maybe our company outing this year, we're going to raise money and we're going to give it to a nonprofit. Folds of Honor would love to come in and be a part of that experience with you. And
so if you're a business owner out there listening to the pod, you feel called,
Right.
to be a Hoosier that supports the families of fallen Hoosiers.
Right.
And disabled Hoosiers that were willing to volunteer and put their life on the line, like, you got to talk to Mike.
That's it.
Like, boom, there it is.
And we run we run very lean. I mentioned earlier, 91 cents of every dollar we collect goes directly to scholarships. And so our board, being an all volunteer board, we want to make sure that if you entrust us with $1 or $10 or $1,000 or whatever the scenario is, if you trust us with that, we're going to make sure we put it to exactly where you thought it went, and that's scholarships. And we try and make sure that we honor that. It's kind of in our Dan, our founder, makes sure that's 91 cents to him isn't enough. It should be higher in his eyes. But at some point there is some cost of doing business.
Yeah.
But
so are there ways, are there events you host every year? Any annual golf outings, ways that just individuals can get involved?
Yep. So we do Cars and Coffee, Indianapolis Cars and Coffee Group. They do a car show once a month, and so that supports us. So getting involved in that. We do a golf event up in over at Maple Creek on the east side of Indianapolis. Our website, which we're getting ready to update, the dates, hopefully by the time you get this release, we'll have our event calendar more accurate, but indiana.foldsofhonor.org has our event calendar. Facebook, social media, we list all of our events there, but we do an annual gala every year. We're pushing ours to a year from now, so we're going to try and do it in the spring to kind of kick off the season, but looking for gala sponsors, and really that's an opportunity where we bring in a family, the family tells their story. We usually have some sort of country artist singing, and
all right, I'm in.
Yep.
I'll buy tickets.
I love it. So
first table. I'll put the hand up. First table. We got
excellent. I love it.
Sign me up.
I love it.
Man, Mike, thank you so much for coming on and telling your story, telling the story of Folds of Honor. Yeah. I mean, and talk about the plan. Who would have thought? And this is blunt, but it is. Who would have thought that maybe one of the most selfish, kind of like doing a rewards mile run, would commit you to a life of service?
Yeah. Yeah, I think about that all the time, and I think that's when when my life shifted in that sense. I realized that it isn't about me, right? And so this is kind of silly. As we go on kind of a little tangent. I apologize, but we go down to the Indy Fuel game. We've been big fans of Indy Fuel, and so at every game they say, if you're a member of the military, please stand up. And I'm like, and my wife goes, how come you never stand? I'm like, because I don't need the recognition, right? Like, I know what I've done, I know what I'm capable of, and and so it's one of those, like, even in this work, like a lot of times, like, I don't want to be the face of the organization. I just want to help, right? This isn't about me. So I went from being, there was a time when, brother, let me tell you, I would be the first in line. Yeah.
Wait, like everywhere you go, does this have the discount?
Yeah,
like,
exactly. But I once I realized that one is like, there's some people out there that have gone through some amazing, hard, challenging stuff, and a lot of them do it alone, and so knowing that I'm still very blessed, and so I don't need, or I don't want, I want to make sure any energy I have gets pushed in their direction, because they're the true heroes, and they're the ones that have made the sacrifice.
And isn't it funny how, like, when you're doing impactful work and you find your calling, your quality of life, like, it's like, you could receive praise, accolades, free hot dogs, whatever it might be, and it's like, that's going to be all right. But when you get to impact the lives of families and others and Hoosiers, and
the saying is, when you reach out to help someone else, you're actually the one that benefits.
Yeah.
And that's what, and again, that's why I always end it with something along the lines of, like, this may not be your passion, and that's fine, right? Mm-hmm. There is no harm if you're like, yep, great story, Mike, cool, good luck to you, but I'm passionate about whatever, and so what I say is, in that whatever community that you're passionate about, there are equally people who need some support. And so if you're passionate about saving the whales, man, they need to be saved. Go do that, and do it to the best of your ability. Be the best you can at it. because they will benefit. And so if that's not it, then we're welcome to join our mission, and we'll bring you along.
I love it, man. We have 4 questions left to wrap out the episode. The first one's our Younger Years segment. It's brought to you by our friends at Our Fellowship. They're a great organization here in Indiana helping develop young business leaders across the state. Mike, what advice would you give to your 22-year-old self?
Open your ears. There are all kinds of opportunities to do things. And I say this all the time, is there are a lot of successful people, a lot of very talented, rich people that probably aren't any smarter than you or I, right? But they have a grind and they have a listen. And so I think a lot of times that self-doubt in your own head makes you say, you know what, I can't do this. And so Henry Ford says, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. And so listen for the opportunities and be willing to explore them, and then go grind. Get it done.
Great advice. The work ethic and the listening. I think you talk about when your life changed, when you had your eyes open to going out and serving others. It's funny that now I host a podcast and I do a bunch of talking for a living. That's, the shtick. But so much of this and so much of my life changed when I started listening. And you're about listening to hear and to get other people's stories. The less I spend talking about me and my anecdotes and whatever, and the more people get to hear from you, the more they like the show, the more people that listen to the show.
Right.
It's funny how that works out. These are the same 3 questions we ask everyone that sits in the chair. First one, what is something the world needs to know about Indiana?
When you asked me how I ended up in Indiana, and I wasn't supposed to be in Indiana. I was living in San Antonio, working in D.C. My goal was to move to D.C. So the plan was to go work at the Pentagon. That was my career. When it came time to do that, I was one assignment kind of missing, and I needed a kind of a state assignment as a superintendent to kind of fill a void. So they said, why don't you go to Indiana for a year, get that bullet checked off, get that thing, yeah, you've done that, and then we'll bring you up to the Pentagon. So, okay, great. So I moved to Indiana. They put me in charge of recruiting for the state of Indiana. It's a great job, and a lot of great recruiters that work for me. And not from here, don't know anybody in Indiana. I didn't even really like corn, so I wasn't really sure why I was coming here in the first place. And
this is 2010.
This is 2010. My wife is a school teacher, and so she says, "Well," I said, "We should go. Where are we going to live?" I'm like, "We can live pretty much anywhere we want in the state. So you find out where you want to live." And so she kind of settled on Hamilton County, and she's like, "I want to teach in Carmel, Fishers, Noblesville area." And so she says, let's live in Carmel. We rented a house in Carmel because we're not staying here. So we rented a house for a year. As we're renting this house, the job that I wanted at the Pentagon opened up. And so I applied for the job, and the plan was to go to the Pentagon, be here for a year and gone. In that year, she fell in love with Indiana. I fell in love with Indiana, but that wasn't the plan. So we kind of put those feelings aside. As the job came open, she started looking at houses in D.C., and I'm excited about the job. And so she's excited about looking at houses. I'm excited about the job. And we start looking at, the transition. And we said, okay, we're going to make this work. All of a sudden I go, I don't really want to go to D.C. I like Indiana. It's a really cool state. The people here are amazing. So, but now here's the challenge is my wife's interested in buying a house in D.C. So I now need to tell her, hey, honey, we're not going to D.C. But I didn't want to hurt her feelings. So I just kind of kept that aside. I'm like, you know what? She wants to go to D.C. She's excited about it. We'll go to D.C. At the exact same time, she's like, I don't want to leave Indiana. I don't want to move to Washington, D.C. But how do I tell my husband that I don't want to go? And because he's excited about this new job. So we're both at this point where neither one of us wanted to tell each other how we were truly feeling. And so we almost went to D.C. and neither one of us wanted to go. And I don't remember exactly how we figured it out, but through a little bit of love and communication, we both kind of figured out Indiana is a really cool state. Indianapolis is a really cool city. And everything, when we lived in San Antonio, there was basketball, baseball, all of that is here at the right scale. It's not overwhelming. And so the people are friendly. You have so much to do. I wish we maybe a little less rain, right?
That's recency bias right now because it's April,
But no, so we fell in love with it here, and that was 2010, and we're like, okay. So then months later, we bought a house, and here we are.
And here we are.
Yeah.
I love that. I always loved that. It's someone called it this on a podcast I was listening to, sticky.
Yeah.
Indiana's sticky. You get in it. If you really put some roots down and get some surface area out there, it's going to just pull you in.
Yeah.
Okay. Last 2 questions. You get to share, I mean, you've been here for 15 years now. You get to share some part of Indiana that you found that you've loved that more people need to know about. What is a hidden gem in Indiana?
Turkey Run Park.
Yeah.
We went down there probably during COVID, right? It was one of those, I think COVID in a sense helped us kind of get out. We were just kind of cabin fevered and they're like, let's go down to Turkey Run Park, and being one with nature sometimes, the cliche, it's, we really had a lot of fun there. And I think even Fort Bend Park, I think our park system is pretty cool and pretty amazing. And, today we spend so much time on our phones and we spend so much time, and there's a lot of stuff we do that doesn't really matter. And I think if you can take a moment to just reconnect back with our roots and our nature, and just listen to the birds chirp and watching the grass grow and smelling that dewy mist, it's
Amen.
So the park system, I think that's the hidden gem, and very easily for a family to just go reconnect and spend the day and make it a no phone day, right? And
no phone day.
Leave the phone in the car and just get out and just. Oh, hi, who are you? You're my son? Oh, nice to meet you, know?
Actually, this is so bad because I am that guy. I am like chronically online. I need to maybe build that in like once a month, a no phone day.
Yeah. Go to a park, even a local park. I mean, even in like, Carmel Fishers area, there's a lot of little parks that are just great.
Final piece here. You get to share the love, and this is where we find a lot of our new guests. Who's a Hoosier that we need to keep on our radar? Someone who's doing big things.
Are you familiar with the Taste of Indiana?
No.
62nd and Binford.
Yeah.
That's a really cool operation, and I don't know their name, and I'm a customer, that's all I am. But I tell you, so it's a little shop. They find everything that's made in Indiana and sell it. So Albanese gummy bears. Gummy bears are made in Indiana, right? I didn't know that until I started buying them from them.
Oh yeah, Albanese. Come on.
Sorry, yeah. So
wow, these are sick. We should.
Yeah, so you absolutely need to get a taste of Indiana on here. So everything they sell is made in Indiana. Every single thing they sell. And so they make really cool gift baskets. And so if you want to send a gift basket to a friend that everything in there is sourced from Indiana, that's the place to go. So what I think is cool about them is they're spreading the love of Indiana by saying, every time I go to a conference with my current job, I always bring stuff from Indiana and say, hey, this was made, everything in this basket was made in Indiana. So that's who is doing amazing things.
If a taste from Indiana sees this, hears this, we should talk. This is sick.
Right at 62nd and Binford.
Yeah.
It's 4 miles from here. So just drive down one day, pop in and say, hey, I want you on my podcast. And I'll mention it to them next time I'm in there too as well.
These are so cool. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Supporting Indiana companies since 1984. Custom gifts. Amazing.
Yeah, everything they make is made in Indiana. And so I think what's really cool about what they do is, they have maple syrup that's made in Indiana, which, sure, but I never really thought of it before. They have candy and chocolate and, gummy bears and all kinds of things. So it's just...
I haven't had that one before. That's a good hidden gem. Mike, thank you so much for coming on today. Thanks for sharing your story, the story of Folds of Honor, and all the amazing work you guys are doing to support families of servicemen and first responders. I appreciate it. And keep us in the loop on the gala next year and any events throughout the summer that we can attend and show up at.
Excellent. Thank you for having us on and for all you do for the state of Indiana. Love it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Get In. If you like what you heard, make sure you leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. This show is made possible by our friends up at Sweetwater. Whether you're looking to start a podcast or take your content to the next level, click the link in the description to see all my gear recommendations at sweetwater.com. If you want a behind-the-scenes look at everything we're doing across the state, make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Nate Spangle. Thank you so much for listening and being part of what makes the Hoosier State great. We'll see you next time here on Get In.